This is the Breakaway. To those watching on Twitter, Facebook or YouTube, welcome along. Peter Sagan with the win on stage 5, his 12th victory at the Tour de France, the first of this year's tour. Only 4 wins so far for the 3-time world champion, but this is where it matters most. The trademark goggles around his neck as he takes in the applause, takes in the worship, and takes in his 12th victory at the Tour de France. Well, we are delighted to be joined by Matt Smith from Mitchelton Scott today, joining myself and Adam and Brian, fresh from the team car today, Matt. Thank you very much. Maybe not so fresh, I guess, given this heat. We only ever really get to see what's happening at the front of a race. From your vantage point today, what was going on in the thick of it?
Yeah, look, today was one of those days where it was quite a nervous final. Just because of the way the road was, and it just got faster and faster, but it wasn't as aggressive day as I would have expected. I would have expected the first hour of racing to be a lot harder and a lot more of a fight to get into that break of the day, and that didn't eventuate.
But why do you think it wasn't as aggressive for an hour? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know we wanted to mark certain teams out of the breakaway today to ensure a small group sprint, because that was either going to go one way or the other. It's going to be very easy for the leading team to control, or teams like Bora or Sunweb, as we saw. Or if it was going to be very, very hard and very selective, you know, we had Adam Yates and to mark guys like Alaphilippe or the best climbers if it went very, very hard, which it didn't.
We saw Simon Yates off the back through the race. What is the game plan with him so far?
Was it Adam, though?
Was it Adam?
What are they playing here?
Well, on race radio, they called, 2 days ago on the race radio, they called Adam Yates in the front group on the cobbles. It was the first day in the front group, and then 30 seconds later they said he got dropped. So he clearly can't be in 2 places at the same time.
Well, one of them is supposed to be wearing red socks for this tour, but surely they can just swap the red socks and confuse us all if you're not looking at the race number.
Well, they alternate. No, look, seriously, Simon's in a good place. The plan has always been, he's came here to, the #1 priority for Simon is to be support for Adam, especially in the back end of the race. And things are going along the plan. He's going to find his rhythm over this first 10 days. And I'm pretty confident he's going to be very, very handy when we need him most.
Did they share a room with each other?
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
There we go. That's interesting.
They very rarely do races together.
Interestingly, though, I'm going to bring up something from the Giro. You remember that Simon said he detrained a bit in that first week, being a little bit easy. Is he worried about that now, or is he taking that form from the Giro and sort of riding into this race a bit to find his legs more than... Because at the Giro, he was worried that the first 10 days was a bit easy and he was worried about losing his form. Is he thinking that now, or is he thinking I'm going to ride into this race and really peak for that last week with Adam, his brother?
No, he's not worried about that at all, because obviously his role here is completely different. So when you're a GC guy, you can't have a bad day on any day.
Of course, yeah.
So now it's, today you come and got bottles at the bottom of the climb. Other guys were getting dropped. There was 50, 60 guys getting dropped. We got to call up for your bottles. Picked up a couple of bottles, zipped them up to his brother, and whoever wanted the last couple, and then he put in the small chain ring and cruised up the last climb. So he's in a good place.
What about Adam then? Some time to make up at this stage 5. We have the crucial in the first week, at least stage 6 to come, La Planche des Belles Filles. Are you happy with how Adam has managed the race so far? And if you weren't, would you tell us?
No, look, we would have, to be honest, from the team's time trial, we were a little bit disappointed in our performance as a team. We would have thought we would have been maybe 10 seconds closer to, I would have thought, that we would have been in the first 5 or 6 teams, and all those teams would have been within 5 and 10 seconds. I don't think anyone would have predicted the ride that Jumbo Visma did. So at the end of the day, besides Stefan Kruijswijk, we're still only 20 seconds behind the best of the rest, and so that's a good place to be when we haven't even really started racing. So in general, yes.
And from that team time trial, apart from, you just mentioned Jumbo Visma, who else surprised you?
No one really. Maybe at the lower end. I think what that team's time trial really did highlight is the level of all the teams in the team's time trial is getting more and more narrow. Yeah. Whereas I suppose 5 or 6 years ago, the teams who really specialised in that event and put a lot into it, which we were one of those guys, that there was big margins. And you look at now the World Championships and the last 2 Tour de France before this had been decided by under a second. And there was World Championships decided by 1 or 2 seconds. And Jumbo Visma's ride was incredible, and no one would have predicted that. But I think what has shown is that there's a lot more teams putting more effort into the team Sondra, because it is very important. And I suppose what it shows on from our aspect is we're probably putting a little bit more effort into our climbing stock. And sometimes something's got to give.
And can you see that in the race as well? You know, in the stages like today, in the past, you get the guys that would come up to the front and, you know, like Simon's doing, he's sandbagging a little bit for those last weeks. Before, that didn't traditionally happen, did he? You always get the hanger-oners that are always just trying to hang on just for the sake of hanging on to beat your fellow countrymen or something. Are you seeing that more now? Because at the front of the day, like you said, it wasn't that hard, but there wasn't that many in the front. There were a lot of guys sitting up and thinking, you know, last week's super hard, I need to save some energy, because in the past, it never happened, did it, really?
No, it didn't. It didn't. And I suppose on some teams, it still doesn't. But look, Ineos are doing the same thing with Walt Pauls. I know what he's doing. Yeah. I know what the plan is for Walt Pauls in the last week. He's going to be there for Geraint and for the young Colombian fella.
And Pauls versus Simon Yates.
So look, they're both that's our marginal gains as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, what about then racing against and trying to beat Team Ineos? Because they were coming into this with Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas. Chris Froome not here. They still have a co-leadership, as they say. Now, I have a slight theory about this, whereby I think that if they were just to have a plan A and a plan B after coming in with co-leadership, it would be assigned to other teams that maybe they're slightly weaker. So keeping a co-leadership is as much a statement of intent to you guys as it is to anyone else. Are you really watching both Bernal and Thomas the same, or are you watching Thomas more so?
No, we are watching the same. I think G's in a good place, and I think we'll know. Obviously, we'll get a little bit of an indication tomorrow, only a small one. But the back end of this race is so hard. So I'm sure if G gets through this first 10 days of the race in a good position, his condition will grow. And as far as Bernal, we know the condition he's in from Tour of Switzerland. But I still think at Tour of Switzerland, he wasn't even showing 100% what he was capable of doing. And I think we're going to get our first good look at that tomorrow afternoon.
But how can you look at both riders if you've got only one rider?
Like I said, we've got two, haven't we? Yeah, exactly. We've got two. One for GC, one for GC, and one to watch, mate. But I see them as dual leadership. Look, they've got a very, very successful template they've been running for 7 or 8 years now, and they've got two leaders until one is not.
Yeah.
Christian Prudhomme has said that he wants to break Team Ineos's dominance in this race, Team Sky as they were before. More medium mountains, less or category climbs. Is this the kind of parkour that we will finally see Team Ineos be knocked off that top step at the podium?
Oh, look, I don't think whatever the parkour is, they're still the best team in the world, and they've proven that over the last 7 or 8 years. So it doesn't... Look, this year's parkour is certainly a lot more challenging than we saw last year. I think last year... The difference for me is when you avoid Western France, it certainly changes the dynamic of the first week. We're not on the coast. No, we haven't got cobbles this year. And Eastern France is it's a very different ball game, and it's been for the Tour de France and a lot more relatively relaxed in the car anyway in this first week than the last couple of years.
I think that's what we've seen. There's not been I don't think anyone's abandoned yet. Normally you've got about 30 people out by now, haven't you? So it's obviously that it's a lot more relaxed than it has been. And I think even, you know, like I said a minute ago, the riders slipping back. You can see that in all aspects of the race. People are not as aggressive to be in the position all the time. It's just sort of like, leave those guys to it. My job's done for today, which is surprising to see at the Tour de France, really.
Yeah, look, I think when the riders feel the stress, it also obviously carries on with the way they race all the way through. And that last year was a perfect example. There was 10 days of stress until that cobble section was finished and we got on our planes and flew to the south of France. It was a really stressful 10 days because there was crashes, there was always wind, and then obviously that big pave stage, everyone was scared of that. So it's a very different tour. I see some similarities to the tour in 2016, minus the first 3 days up in Normandy. Then we started to go through the middle of France there and down towards the Pyrenees, and I see some similarities in the course. The only difference is this is a much harder back end of the Tour de France than we've probably seen in the last decade.
And in that respect, you talk about a lack of stress. Does it make it slightly less stressful then that Julian Alaphilippe still has a yellow jersey on his back? Because, I mean, it's great for the French fans, but he's not necessarily one who is going to be trying to keep that jersey on his back all the way to Paris. I mean, we see him there delighting the fans once again, and we expect him to keep it on his back for a few days yet, but not a GC threat.
He's not over 3 weeks. He's not over 3 weeks, but he's the world's best one-day rider, and he'll go far. And I think Quickstep will do whatever they can to keep the jersey for the next couple of days, whatever's physically possible, because, like you said before, it creates a hell of a lot of publicity having a Frenchman in the yellow jersey, and he's a great rider. But over the 3 weeks, I don't think the GC teams are really worried about him for the overall.
Well, Matt, we've been asking our viewers for tweets and questions for yourself, and here's one from Vin Woods, who wants to know, will either Yates brother be allowed off the leash if both are going well and have a good number of teammates with them in these early climbs?
The answer is yes.
Expand, please, Mr. White.
Yes, they will be. Simon, not so much in the next week, because obviously we're thinking long term for the end of the tail end of the race. But look, tomorrow's a stage there where I think it's not a day that I think any team will be looking to be that aggressive with the GC guys. But I think you're going to see the cream of the crop rise to the top tomorrow in that final. And
you're a poet and you don't know.
But the big thing that
I think people are really underestimating about tomorrow's stage, yes, we've used this final before, but it's nearly 3,800 metres of climbing in the day. So the day in general is much, much tougher than we've ever had before.
And a new finish.
And 900 metres over the top. So I think we're going to see a very, very selective group at the bottom.
Have you got a plan for every day of the tour, or are you just going to, you know, we always say it's like chess and wheels. You're always waiting for the opposition to make their move and then you counter that move, or do you have a distinctive plan?
Yeah, I've got a distinctive plan for the whole tour, which obviously will change. But I've got one...
How does it change, though?
On what's happening day to day. So I've got a plan for the first 10 days, how I in a perfect world, how things we'd like them to turn out. Perfect worlds obviously always don't happen, but we've got a plan where we want to be on by the first rest day, and so far so good.
But do you rest that plan on, say, Team Ineos, formerly Team Sky, who have kind of dominated 3-week Grand Tours in the last 5-6 years?
To a certain extent, you can control what you can control, but you also know the template that they use to race. So, yeah, we know how they race roughly, but at the end of the day, we've got to manage our resources the most efficient way possible in that first 10 days. When we get to the rest day, then we'll sit down, talk again, and we'll unleash the plan for the second half of the race.
And who's your dark horse for this race?
Simon Yates.
Dark horse? I think dark horse, and people might not think he's dark, is Bernal, because he's 22 years of age. It's his second Tour de France, and it's his first Grand Tour in the leadership role. So some people would think he's a favourite, but I see him as a dark horse.
It's exactly what I went with at the start of the race, Matt, so thank you. You've backed me up. Rob Hatton commentary was saying earlier that he thinks, and lots of the French here think, Thibaut Pinot would be nailed on for tomorrow. What do you make of that?
Oh, look, I think he's one of the 10 riders I would expect in the front tomorrow, for sure. I don't think there'll be too big a margins amongst the elite guys. But I think what tomorrow we'll find is guys who want to really build into the race, they will get caught out tomorrow. Well, there's nowhere to hide tomorrow. And maybe some of the guys who came from the Giro, maybe it's a little bit too much. I think actually, when you look at it, the only GC rider who's come from the Giro, who's doing GC here, is Nibali. So I think some guys will get caught out tomorrow. But I think the top 10 guys who you put down on paper before the race, I don't think there'll be too big a gap, because I think they'll be only really racing on the final climb of the day.
And as a true spoken Aussie, what's it like working with two very good English lads?
They're good boys to work with, they are. And obviously they
talk about cricket or anything like that? Or
well,
rugby?
We were talking about cricket this morning. We're talking about, because we've got a couple of cricket nuts in the team following the India-New Zealand game. Yeah. And when we were talking about cricket there, I was getting some pretty bemused looks on the faces of Adam and Simon. Football's another story. Football's another story. They're not cricket fans, but they're Man U fans, especially Adam. But yeah, cricket's not high on their list of priorities, that's for sure.
You say that tomorrow we might not expect huge time gaps between the GC contenders. Vincenzo Nibali has said that he doesn't know yet, and we don't know how much he's telling the truth, of course, but he said that he may be coming for stage wins, he may be going for GC, and he, like a few others, will know where he stands at the top of La Planche des Belles Filles. So even if we don't see too much of a differentiation between those time gaps, do you think we will start to see from tomorrow who will be contending that podium?
100%, 100%. And I think with Vincenzo, for me, look, I know that Dumoulin and Froome did back up last year and podium the Giro and Giro on the Tour. But a lot of people also underestimate that 1 week extra recovery makes a big difference. Makes a big difference. So look, I think Nibali will, with the intention, will ride GC until it doesn't work.
He's only had 2 days racing since the Giro.
Yeah, he rode Lugano and National Championships. And I think he'll start with the intention of riding general classification. Once he falls off, I think someone like Vincenzo doesn't come here to run 8th place. So I think when that goal is finished, then he'll probably take it easy to and go after some stages.
He is a threat either way, isn't he? Well, we've got another tweet for you here, Matt. Porsche has asked, being an Aussie team, can you see an Australian running for GC in a few years? For example, Jack Haig.
I definitely can. I think we've got two in our second row of developing GC riders, and one is Jack Haig, and the other one who's not here is Lucas Hamilton. For the people who watch the Giro, he's just turned 23 years of age. It was his first Grand Tour, and the coolness and the calmness he showed under pressure in his first Grand Tour for working for Simon was incredible. And obviously Jack's here in his first Tour de France. People who watched last year's Giro on the Vuelta show how good he can be and how valuable asset he's been for our team. So we've got two Aussies in the making, but at the moment, our GC guys are the two Yates brothers and also Esteban Chavez.
You as a manager, you've now won a Grand Tour. As a sports director, now you've won a Grand Tour. Do you think any differently, or do you just think the same as you were going into any of these races before?
No, I think exactly the same. I think.
Did you learn anything from winning that Vuelta last year with Simon?
Yeah, we did. I think we learnt more from last year's Giro. I think sometimes you learn more from mistakes and where you can improve than actually when you're winning. But I think as an organisation, what the Vuelta win gave us was just that confidence amongst the group that, you know, we've been knocking on the door for a couple of years, but to finally be able to do it, I think that gave, in general, the organisation a hell of a lot of confidence.
Matt, it has been a delight to have you here. Thank you very much for braving this late afternoon sunshine, and best of luck tomorrow. It is a big day for Matt and his main man, Adam Yates, and all of the GC contenders tomorrow. Let's show you what Stage 6 has in store. We have been looking forward to this one. It is the one in the first week that we have been waiting for, La Planche des Belles Filles. Not just the final summit to deal with, though. We have 7 categorised climbs on the road from Mulhouse. There will not be a minute's respite all day. And to top it all off, what you don't see in the profile is the extra kilometre of climbing we were talking about. Taking in a forest road, averaging some 10%, but with one section almost double that. It is not a day for the faint-hearted, for those on the bike or those watching. Now, if you've missed any of today, you can catch the stage highlights on Eurosport 1 tonight at 8. We will be back at 1:45 tomorrow, and again, that is live on Eurosport 1. And don't forget, the Sir Bradley Wiggins podcast from the Tour de France is live right now. You can hear his uncensored thoughts, dear lovers, by downloading and listening to the Bradley Wiggins podcast. Well, it was the toughest stage of the Tour de France so far, and Peter Sagan emerged as the hardest of hard men on the day. If you like that, you'll love tomorrow. La Planche des Belles Filles and the first GC test to come. Who's ready for that then? See you tomorrow.